Okay, so we're on. Good morning. Today is Thursday, February 23rd, 2023. It is a few minutes after 9, and this is a meeting of Senate Natural Resources and Energy. So we're going to take care of a couple housekeeping things, as well as talk about calendar a little bit, and then we will have Ms. Chakowski and later this morning to help us walk through the Energy Efficiency Modernization Act language that's currently just a drafting request. So that we could do it as a committee bill rather than introduce it separately. The first thing of the world of housekeeping is we have appointment letters to go through, and we have how many?
15.
15, so there are 5 of us. And how about I'll read them quickly. And if it's someone you know or would like to do, just sing out and I'll just pass it to you. So these are appointments to the NRB. Brad Aldrich of Natural Resources Board.
Okay.
And Brad Aldrich of Shelburne. Okay, set that one aside. Here's one I'd like to do, which is an alternate to the NRB, Elizabeth Courtney.
Oh. Yeah, she's just right over there. Yeah, we all know.
She's an old pal.
NRB, Steve Larrabee.
From
Danville, West Danville.
Steve who?
Larrabee. He
Oh,
used
yeah,
to be,
used to
was
be.
in the house.
Used to never. Who's gonna change things
Okay. I'm gonna give
4
this
years later?
to you because it's kind of your neck of the woods. Julie Walcott to the NRB, and she is in Enosburg. And other than pass this along. We're gonna, Evan Hammond from Lunenburg to the Connecticut River Valley Flood Control Commission.
Oh, that, can you just, did you just
River
come with
Valley.
numbers?
What's
said
that?
the last one, did he just give you the last one?
Yeah,
Julie will, yeah.
thanks for that question. So, do you have that information?
I'm writing it down. I'm gonna collect those from people because they don't need those. They don't give any phone numbers.
Or
It's just who they are.
There's an address here.
Well, there is an address.
Oh, but there's no, I'm not gonna mail the letter, so.
No.
Did you say collect these back?
Well, I think it would be a good idea since we have to turn them back in to the authorities upstairs.
Okay.
do we have a
So
contact?
can,
No.
We
never give us.
so I,
You'll be sent.
now, we're gonna have to give these back to, let's make a list. So you're.
I'm taking, yeah.
In fact, we should pass a bill saying that appointment letters should include phone numbers.
Yes,
Yeah, no kidding.
or,
We can put it on the office upstairs.
Unless they should be redacted information.
okay, so, John Wheeling, Commissioner, Department of Environmental Conservation,
Location.
East Montpelier.
I take those.
Commissioner Wheeling, okay, there you go, so, and again, so that we have a repeat basis, once you have one, please give it, write down the name and then give it back to June, please. Gary Moore, Connecticut River Valley Flood Control.
Used to be the Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife.
That's who we've done it.
Gail Fowler to Current Use Advisory Board, she's from Tinmouth.
It's your way, isn't
It's
it?
not mine, but I'll do it.
Ted Foster of New Haven to the Current Use Advisory Board.
What?
Ted Foster to the Current Use Advisory Board. So that's my neck. You can take that one. I used to live near Walter Hastings of South Royal to the Current Use Advisory Board. Michael Hogan of Marshfield to the Current Use Advisory Board.
Take.
When you hit 3, let me know, then you have your quota. Harold Harrigan of Sheldon to the Current Use Advisory Board.
I'm happy to take that one.
Okay. Esteemed Franklin County family.
Oh, okay.
think they've sent quite a few people to the legislature, or at least a couple. The grandfather of this Harold, I think, was the one who said on a floor report, I didn't load this wheelbarrow, I'm just pushing it.
We have other Francis Harvey quotes as well.
Which we will not, which we will not use.
No, my goodness.
All right,
We're having fun this morning, I like
I'd
it.
like to learn about those on lunch break. Josh Lagerquist, Montpelier to current use advisory board.
I'm wondering if I should
Or just.
give up Julie Wolf because, and like take the Montpelier people.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
so we'll trade. So
Trade.
Julie Walcott,
No, I've got 3 people who are all in my
Who's gonna
district.
take off?
okay, so Senator McDonald, you have 2. Senator McCormick, you have how many names
2.
so far? All right, so you're the winner of this one.
Julie Wolf.
Okay, up and look, this is a perfect fit. John Harrison of Muscatine,
I'll take John
at the
Harrison.
River Valley.
I've met him a few
Flood
times.
Control Board. One more, Allison Frazier of Richmond to the Fish and Wildlife Board. So who doesn't have 3 yet?
I mean, this is John Harrison.
I have
State
3.
reps.
Anyone not have 3? I think
I
you
have
have 2.
3.
Oh, you have 3.
I'll do the Mission Wildlife.
You're the winner of the last one. the third one. Okay, so can,
Write down who you have and please give me the paper back.
I'm curious. We should connect about Allison Frazier, because I may know her,
so
maybe. I'm curious if it's the Allison Frazier I'm thinking of. Okay, yeah, see if she knows Ann
Is
Watson.
it really not good?
all right,
Ann Watson says.
so you have who everyone's
We
got.
are we?
She'll say, yes, I know her, and I promised I will get that $5 back. 13 years ago.
So in order to, we're gonna have to work on our system here. So can everyone pass these back in? Jude wrote down who you got. We'll make copies,
Yes.
give you a copy back.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And then also, over however much time,
Weekend.
we'll get the phones and emails to people, so
Weekend.
you can
So you
follow up.
know who I have.
Yes,
didn't
I
write
do.
it down.
I wrote it down.
All right, so thank you for that, and if we can do that by the next 3-4 weeks, something like that, if we beat the end of the session, rush, that would be good. I'll check in with you periodically. Thank you for that. And need copy. Oh, so let's talk calendar for a bit. So we are going to receive the housing bill today. This committee has jurisdiction over land use and planning. Titles 24 and Title 10. The municipal planning is in Chapter 121, Title 24. Act 250 is in Title 10. And there's ample change to both those titles in the housing bill, as I understand it. We'll have Senator Ron Hinsdale interview a bill introduction, and then we'll also spend time with Ms. Chakowski doing a line-by-line read-through, so we really do a close read of the bill. Ms. Chakowski will also spend an hour and a half with us doing an active primer, so they can also get back. It's a light introduction, but it will be enough to like get the wheels turning. I've checked in with the corner office. I don't know the exact schedule, but we'll have like, I need to hear from the corner office how soon they want that bill out. And I don't know the answer to that, but we will be in sort of a full court press on that bill for 4 days, 5 days, something like that. Maybe we'll be done sooner. And
So germane to trails, long driveways.
long driveways,
This is gonna be a little change to 50.
Are you thinking that we should add forestry to what we're at?
Oh, we're being asked to, put on our own blindfolds, tie our wrists behind our back before we get this done, so.
Yeah, so I said, there was a request to move it very quickly, and I said, well, if we just strip all the Act 250 sections out, that won't take long at all. So, I want us to have enough, everyone in here, and the entire building, I think, supports the county development of affordable housing.
Yes.
And I think I'm entirely open to the notion that good planning can happen at any level, but I'd say the challenge is to make sure it's good planning and that that it is actual good planning with a wide enough lens to see beyond the borders of the property or the borders of the town. I mean, that's to me the strength of activities, opening the lens wider to seeing a bigger perspective that a DRB wouldn't necessarily look at.
That's your way of saying, you believe it's germane with the driveways. One left corridors.
So before we even get started on that 250, I would,
You have a bill in here too. on
yeah,
250.
yeah, and I think it could very well, that language could be drafted into the housing bill. So on active, I just want to, Act 250 is not a planning bill, it was originally intended to be part of a larger package, going back to Dean Davis, but the planning part never happened. And it is an environmental review, and which is, it's why it is important to have it, as well as town regulations, and the idea that these are duplicative, they're actually not entirely duplicative. It's a different question that Act 50 asks and answers, that the town is asking and answers.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Right, and so, I think I also get the feeling no one here is interested in duplicative planning, so how? And if you set the Wayback Machine to 1970, there were very few towns with town plans, much less DRBs and planning commissions, and the level of planning at the municipal and regional level has advanced a long way, but not even throughout the state. And I think it's that unevenness that makes it challenging to sort of sign off on letting it be handled just at the municipal level. But we have a mayor check who's been through this from the municipal side, so I think it'll be helpful for you to share what happened, for instance, in Montpelier. Some people worry that the Act 250, we'll hear from people about what their concerns are with Act 250. I think I've heard that, the appeals process is much too easy to weaponize. You can tie something up for 6, 7, 8 years.
Well, and if I may, I just want to also agree that even, having come from being mayor, I fully agree, good planning is good planning, as long as it happens somewhere. So
Or a recession or COVID doesn't come around and interrupt what had been planned for. Sure. Then in which case Act 250 can be excused and pull out this.
Mr. Chairman, I would also
You
respond.
were a district commissioner.
I was,
And a
chair.
district commission chair, so.
I would point out that the complaint about Act 250 manifesting differently in different areas of the state. That's half of the game of dueling complaints. Because the other complaint you get is Act 250 thinks it's one size fits all, and actually every community is different. So you get.
It's a very loose garment.
And I asked them, so which of these contradiction complaints are you going to advance? Because often you'll get both being advanced simultaneously.
And, and
We're having our debate already, isn't it?
well, it's just, as the bill comes in, I want to be entirely fair, even-handed in support of housing. And I also don't want to stay steamrolled time-wise, just have to push something out the door or keep up with the calendar and balancing act. I feel like this is a smart, thoughtful committee, and I'm sure we'll do fine. And also, there is a little bit from my just personal perspective, Art Gibb, who's called the Father Act 250 chair to this committee, was from Addison County. I see his farm regularly, so it's like, I do feel like,
So was Henry Cars.
that I would like to make sure that, if he were looking over our shoulders here, he might be interested in what he would have to say about it. I don't think he's gonna weigh in.
Henry Cars was from your county. He was under House National Resources.
Uh-huh.
The two of those folks didn't agree on much.
Yeah, I could imagine different worldviews. Okay, so, and in terms of other things coming, I met with Chair Sheldon this morning. So we have a household hazardous waste bill, which they also introduced, and I think, I don't know how much it's changed, but we'll see a household hazardous waste bill. They've been working on the bottle bill, and I think they picked up where we left off last spring, with trying to address it at a deeper level, which meant the resources to handle basically tripling the volume through that system. And so we should see that. And there was a land use bill 30 by 30, permanent conservation for 30% of Vermont by 30/30. And I think 50 by 50, I think was also part of it. And I think they will be sending that to us. We may also see the next month or so, the 248A process, which is like Act 250 for PUC permitting, will come to us. So we'll have some interesting work coming our way. Then on our own board, I would like to check in with people about prioritizing what's there. I would like to see us do the energy efficiency modernization back brief update. We're really pushing the sunset out a little and doing I would say a small adjustment that allows for better use of the money. It's not really, so when we have a draft, we'll see that later today. We can walk through that. I think that one is sort of compact and doable.
With most of pushing the data.
Well,
No one is behind modernization needs, other than needing to avoid the dark what it really does.
so the modernization of the Modernization Act was that we didn't have almost anything cooking on addressing thermal and transportation loads. And so we want to modernize the energy efficiency program to let them get started on it. It's kind of, unfortunately, even if S5 goes into law as we got it, it's not until 2026. So there's extending through 27 seems like maybe a good idea to help keep things cooking. I don't know what people are thinking about the other one is S80, the miscellaneous, basically the housekeeping bill for DEC. There was last year was not this committee's error, but things that were supposed to be in that bill were missed. I said, but let us know what was missed and we'll do it promptly this session. So I'd like to make sure that before October we get out to S80 bill, which I also think that's the one we went through with Hannah Smith yesterday, which is say many technical amendments, not much in the way of any policy change. There's also Senator McCormick, you have a chloride contamination reduction program bill. And Senator Lyons brought us a PFAS bill. I'd love to see it come back to PFAS, but that to me feels like a post crossover bill because there are 5 different fingers in the PFAS pie, but in terms of how many different ways it's a problem. And it'd be nice if we're gonna revisit it to do something that looks at our past work and the holes in that past work. And something coherent going forward. That's just my take on PFAS. I didn't mention that we have two on posting of land, right? We have purple posting, purple paint posting, and we also, that's S22. And then we have S21, default establishment, safety zones for unoccupied buildings. We do have S24, the Clean Fuels Program, but I think that's a bigger bill. I don't think Senator White is here. The S24, it's a bigger bill that we would probably knock out in the near term.
I respect that decision.
But it's good that we have the time. We should pause and do a bill introduction.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
That's right, I'm sorry.
It was the day.
It was so good that it just,
Went by. Sorry about that.
Isn't the quote for usually more intensely popular in other years?
Well, we haven't hit crossover of session one of term one, whatever. We're gonna get 3 or 4 more from the House. Okay, so just in terms of, I wanted to make sure we pause. What's in our basket? And if people mull it over and say, of all the things we have, here's the one that I'd most like to see us address. And please let me know, because we also, I think we're gonna end up a little running out full on this. When we were wrapping up on S5, we took testimony from Ms. Davis from the Equity Office and got feedback on how we might improve some of the equity provisions in the bill. And I had said, and we agreed as a committee, that it was timely for us to move the bill, but we also agreed that it was timely for us to think about what we might do in terms of possible enhancements and then put them into a bill offered by all the members of this committee. So because we don't have possession of the bill, we implemented, but as 5 individual senators, we could, in essence, the committee we could offer, and then once the bill is out of our possession. So it becomes a committee amendment. So I thought we might do that and be able to bring that to the floor for 3rd reading. Right now, as best I can tell from air traffic control, 3rd will be like next Thursday or Friday before we leave for county administration. Maybe a little sooner, but so we have a little time, but not a lot of time. And with that, do you have any copies of the language that?
I did get an email from Ellen,
Okay.
the edits that I suggested. So I could, and then,
you send it to me.
and send it to you, and then we can print them. Does that sound
Sure.
reasonable?
Let's do that.
Okay.
And if we're not trying to necessarily do ins and outs today on it, like, but let's get stuff on the table.
It's pretty straightforward. So, Jude, I'm going to forward an email to you. Does that sound okay? Okay, just send that. So hopefully that shows up soon.
The other thing, sorry, I left out one other housekeeping thing. Last year, we did a bill on traffic, which led to development of best management practices for traffic. And I would like to set some time aside for, and we asked for a report back from Commissioner Harris. And so I'd like to spend some time going through that report with the committee and have Commissioner Harrington and others in order to begin. I'm looking at my own set of edits from our final round of edits with Ms. Davis.
Well, I mean, it was shingles. It's 1910 roofing shingles. Apparently so. It was a subdivision of lumber inspectors.
Yeah, so Senator McDowell, why don't you show people what you have? It's pretty interesting to see how big a book it took to hold all the laws of the statutes of the state of Vermont in 19.
Well, this was a biennial, so it's a 2-year. These were all the.
Oh,
That was it.
that's accident resolves for that biennium. So that's not all the green books.
No, it's.
Okay. The last time I think that all our statutes fit into a single book was something like 1930. So there's a thing that looks like Webster's International Dictionary, a giant book. But it's not all that long, so put them all into one book. So with that, Senator Watson, do you want to?
Yeah, sure, well, let me grab,
Your thinking on
yeah,
bill for possible amendments.
absolutely.
And Senator McCormick, you had expressed an interest in doing the same.
On equity.
Yeah, so are you gonna
My,
schedule time with council to turn those into?
I have asked, Office of Racial Equity to make recommendations. I have back.
Okay. The recommendations they gave while they're here, have you gone through those, to use those as the basis?
Oh, I was talking about the ones I gave you a couple of weeks ago.
So,
Pass them on consideration.
the ones from your constituent.
Yeah,
Thank you, Senator Watson. So, so this is the form of an amendment. A little tricky to know exactly where these things search.
If it's useful, I could probably help with page numbers. As far as drafts go, I have draft number 5.1 that I'm working off of, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I think 6.1 is the
Six
one.
one.
Well, 6.1 is the final one, but it wasn't.
Right,
We
we're very,
had it.
very close.
Yes, they're very similar, so.
Okay,
All right, so the first one is section 8124, and then we're looking for A2. A2, so that's on page 7 of this. So the last sentence of that paragraph says, to ensure understanding among obligated parties, the commission shall publicly provide a description of the annual requirements in plain terms. And so I'm proposing that we add with translation services available after in-claim terms.
Right. Okay, and, and this one is, it's an interesting, edit, it's like, in a way, you could say this would be across the board.
Yes, I think it is supposed to be across the board, yes.
Plain terms for everything.
Yeah, well, no, translation services. So that is, but it's, it doesn't hurt to call it out.
Sure.
I think.
And I figured, just, so let's get these all, mark them all in.
Yeah.
And then say, corral them together, and I'd love to send them across the street to the PUC so that they tell us what's up, because I know they're interested in diversity,
Yeah.
equity, and inclusion. They may already have a plan on it. Not that I'm saying that we should put it, but
Yeah.
it's nice to know how it fits into what they do. or
Sure,
do not
yes.
always
I agree. Okay, the second one is on page, I believe it's on page 11 of this graph. So looking for 8124 again, D2, and inserting a new sentence after the third sentence, which 2, 3, so I think that
The first sentence is there. So that will be at the end of the paragraph. But you said there's only 3 sentences.
I've got-
in the
there's-
paragraph.
which paragraph are you, it's,
8124 D2.
maybe I'm on the wrong,
Is this up the, that starts with of their annual requirement?
yes, I've got that there's 4 sentences in there.
Right. One.
Yeah, there's,
Oh, there's, I'm sorry, it's in 2,
it's okay.
3, so it's,
The last sentence before would be examples shall include weatherization, improvements, installation of heat pumps, heat pump hot water, heat pump water heaters and advanced wood heating systems. And then adding the sentence, data collected regarding income shall be kept confidential.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Page 11,
should be
line 15. Data collected regarding income shall be kept confidential. And again, I think this is one of those, like, I think that's true anyway.
Yeah.
But doesn't hurt to call it out. That's call it out, but I,
You said confidential, does that cite the statute that enumerates or authorizes those people? The same standard for, that's used, confidentiality means the same thing that it means for the tax department, and this department, that department, the next department.
it does not say that. I wondered about something similar. I don't think we have, I don't think that,
Okay.
but I don't know.
Okay.
It's often a way
Yeah, to
to
just.
get the job done without having to find every
Yeah.
single one, because they know, those folks know who they are.
Sorry, I seem to be on the wrong draft. I'll go over on 5.
Yes, on 5.1, you're on
Page
page
11.
11, go to line 15. So it ends with this sentence right here. So it starts a new sentence right there.
Okay.
And it says, data collected regarding income shall be kept confidential. Okay.
So I'm marking that in and I'm putting that context, existing law, question mark, cross-reference,
Yeah.
question mark. And again, I don't know what PUC deals with. Also, we talked to like Sarah Phillips and what is it, assistant program, and they have to deal with personal data.
Yeah.
Useful to know how they use that.
Okay, yep. And so the next one is on page 13, F2. And so this was a suggestion from Susanna and I'm sorry, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah.
So,
Director.
Director.
Scratching out the word 3.
Yeah, she was, oh yeah, so this is on line 10. So this is the non-compliance payment. Right now it says shall be 3 times the amount established by the commission, or timely credit payments. She had suggested that should be more. It should really hurt if it doesn't, if they don't do it. It's gotta be worth their while, and that's fine with me.
Okay,
That's,
so I don't, yeah. The example she gave where people just build that in as a cost of business, I don't know where triple or treble damages come from. It seems like it's kind of a standard penalty layer.
Yeah.
And how meaningful that is.
yeah, if 3 is the right number, I'm okay with going back to it, but since you brought it up,
Right?
maybe
Same
that's worth.
thing here, there is, it
Considering-
seems like there's a tradition and I don't know anything more than that.
If we go back to 3, that, yeah, okay. All right, so the next one is an 8127. We're looking for L2.
My copy, I'm looking at 6-1, page 26.
Yes, L2, okay. So this is also about data,
Okay.
putting a new sentence after the first sentence. If there's only one sentence here. Okay, so the end of this very long sentence. Okay, data collected regarding customers or tenants shall be kept confidential.
Find this.
Well, again, there's no reference.
If you, Ms. Newman has your amendment, right? Have you posted it to our website?
I have.
Great. So I'm gonna make a note to. And Senator McCormick, do you have a sense of when you might have something you want to bring forward?
Well,
How do you want?
Senator Watson just said that one of the things that come from director.
All of these come from.
Yeah, so I guess she has chosen to be somebody else's muse. I was really just planning on being a pass-through for her. So probably her recommendations are already known to the committee.
Okay, so I'm gonna send this over to the PUC.
Do you want me to email it to them?
Yes, please. If you could send it to Mr. Landis Marinello or Mr. Bauer, that would be great. Say, request for review and comment, please. Great, thank you, Cheryl. Any, I'm gonna go through my own notes. I have quite a few flags from that last 2 rounds of going through. And rather than do that painfully and slowly on the fly with everyone here, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I'll go through my markups and make sure that for the same things as well.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes. Yeah.
one of my worries has been repeated statement of having PUC do something by rule or order. And I just- I don't know how to deal with this if the rest of the committee doesn't feel it makes a difference in whether or not you have PUC do things by rule to carry out our statute, or do them by order, which be giving them authority with less guidance. You've been through this on other bills.
Yeah, I know that we've gone back and forth, we changed mays and shalls, different places, we added provisions to spell out explicitly what they have to do if they're issuing an order, like we added sort of a notice and comment requirement, stuff like that. Happy to entertain, like to discuss anything people between one going forward. For me personally, I feel like we've reached a balance point in terms of the flexibility.
And you feel assured that we will not see a repeat of what happened with the re-examining and proposing changes in net metering rules,
Right.
only to find out that when we were all done, that they did it by order, and then came in and told us that they shouldn't have done it by order, but it was at that point too complicated for us to undo
Yeah.
what they had done contrary to the statute, and then assured us that they would never do again. I think it made sense.
So I hear your concern, and I think given that the bill has them deliver a rule by January 15 of 25, and then we give ourselves an entire legislative session to look at it. If there were a timing problem like that, I think we would have an entire session to address it directly ourselves. We're going to adjourn for the year, and leave ourselves vulnerable to something happening. I would say, if it were,
Well, that
If they
falls
were to
into
be that
the,
late.
is there a check back?
right,
Is there a check back that actually gives us some authority to, and the way we wrote the law indicates that what you and I are discussing was, we provided an opportunity for the legislature to see their report and act upon it if the legislature thought it was a good idea. And that, they just moved that off in the way they used the order, which for purposes that it was not in the statute for.
well, so the heart of the bill is a rule. And right now, we don't allow them to go forward with the rule until June 1 of that year, so we know that we have a full session. I would say if somehow that rule weren't available to us on time, that we would be justified in moving the June 1 deadline forward to say, we're not going to proceed without having this happen.
Well, you and I are talking, the committee's kind of going, what the heck are they talking about? But basically, the law called forth the PUC making a report on what they plan to do by a date certain. And if the legislature did not intervene, that was considered to be tacit approval of the PUC's work. Well, they didn't provide the report by the given date, which was called for by law, and then they took advantage of the law of their ability to do something by order, which was predicated only upon their having delivered the plan on time. So that's the dilemma that we face. Passing legislation that authorizes the PUC to do stuff by order is, if they do it by order and circumvent, short circuit, the opportunities for the legislature to intervene, because that's what they feel like doing.
Right.
That's the policy.
Okay. So I take your point. So I think what I would like to do is review with council whether there's any possible reading of S5 as currently constructed that will allow the program to go into effect without them having delivered a full rule to its end. Like, could it suddenly be substituted in the form of an order to implement S5? And I don't think that's permissible or legal as constructed, but.
Because there's several places where we're telling them to do stuff by order, and now we're discussing that, well, we don't want them to do it by order illegally. And then when we tell them they can do it by order without specifying the circumstances under which they can't, then they're doing it legally.
So why don't we have council in
That sounds
to revisit that
That's-
question?
reassuring.
Okay, and I'm gonna write that down, the Senator Watson list there. Where's this? Assurances. Question mark. Okay, thank you. Anything else on S5? So with that, we have back to the agenda. We have a little bit of before break is in 35 minutes. We might have an extra long break in it, but I did want to pause while we have everyone here almost. We looked at this the other day. I don't know if people still have their copies. Just in case you don't, here is the language of our from rules that describe our jurisdictions. And given how this is a group of excellent students, I thought maybe we would just do this now. And maybe we have something to rethink. But for myself, and I think others, the page 6 of the Senate rules under that natural resources and environment and energy. And then the final phrase on here is the conservation and planning of sources of energy. And I would like to make that more explicit because we end up with stuff somehow because finance, which is also on here, if they want to look at what finance is allowed to do, it's up above on the page. It says the phrase in there is matters relating to banks, trust companies, insurance, utility companies, and private and quasi-public corporations, including other companies subject to regulation by the PSB. So they regulate water, they regulate shingles, they regulate electricity. So from my perspective, it would be clearer, to see if finance agrees, to have them doing like oversight of these as opposed to writing energy policy for them through the utilities. I mean, I think it's a little somewhat dysfunctional, and this happens pretty regularly for bills. It's like, will this bill go to finance, or will this bill go to the energy committee? So one of the things I'd like to think about is making a more explicit list of what we mean by energy. So, for instance, sorry, I don't have my marked up copy in hand.
What we mean by checks and balances. It's making something somewhat dysfunctional in the form of check and balance.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What is the? I'm trying to find a difference in shape. Where the rubber meets the road. What is it that the finance committee does about energy? rather they not do and have us, because in theory, what is, we have jurisdiction over energy. The Finance Committee has jurisdiction over the utilities. So there are energy utilities that the Finance Committee regulates their businesses, what their business, but we regulate the energy that they deal with. Where is that not working?
If we were, if we're going to have responsibility to look at energy broadly, and the environmental impacts related to its use, then I'm thinking that when it comes to like policy and programs, that we would design and implement those. If they can say, well, okay, but so much of it happens through the regulated community over which the Finance Committee has oversight. So doesn't that mean they have a role? And I would, if there were sort of a polite way to divide, I would say, if they played more of an oversight role as opposed to an originating policy in that committee role, that would make more sense to me.
Now, also, we have 3 members of this committee.
Yeah, I know, I was like, you can decide amongst yourselves, it feels like.
But it's not always gonna be that way.
The dilemma is that monopolies are regulated, and once you have an energy company that's subject to monopoly, the regulation is the purview of the Finance Committee. If it's in the selling of heating oil, which is not monopolized, it doesn't.
Monopoly.
Yeah. It's not regulated as a monopoly, then the Finance Committee doesn't regulate free market capitalism as a committee function, where it does regulate, weighs in on monopolies, which is
But we regulate those different companies because they handle energy.
fuel oil companies.
Yeah, that's-
Well, we do for safety and leakage and how they may or may not store their fuel, or whether they can smoke cigarettes while pumping.
We're getting environmental credits, energy credits.
Well, that's
They become obligated parties.
that's the tension we're talking about. And some are saying, well, we're not going to send this bill to finance. Usually, when you don't send it somewhere, it's because you don't want to put the hassle of what might happen when it gets there. But the chair of agriculture always tries to find ways not to send bills dealing with our natural resources to the Natural Resources Committee. Yeah. Appropriations Committee always seeks to get every bill from every other committee. This is our checks and balances, or our checks and balances, or the somewhat dysfunctional nature of what we're talking about.
What's the dysfunction?
I didn't use the word, perhaps you coined it several minutes ago. This current system was somewhat dysfunctional when it came to which committees operated on which subjects. And I was saying, well, if the subject is X, but X can be regulated as a monopoly, then the committee gets, because it's a monopoly, not because the nature of X, but because it's regulated.
Thank you.
So,
Or financial things, not just smoking while you're pumping gas.
so I'm gonna try to follow my own suggestions or requests,
Yeah, I've asked you on that one.
which is to write up the words and bring it to the committee. I'm gonna do a paragraph as currently constructed, and then one would suggest that it's inserted, but it would be something along the lines of the generation, transmission, distribution, storage, and conservation of energy in all its forms. In all its forms, trying to get us out of the silo of just looking at things like, are we only talking about solar and wind or something? There's a huge energy component to transportation, for instance.
Well, yeah.
And so I think unsiloing that would be helpful. Senator White.
Thank you, Senator Bray, and I respect the finance conversation, and I don't know if I have enough information to weigh in on it as a new senator. But maybe it's a conversation I could do offline with Bloomer to try to understand where those jurisdictional lines fall. But I am more interested in the conversation around transportation.
Yeah.
And I want to understand both how we can advance some of the priorities that impact global warming in the transportation space while also not hurting or taking from the role of the very well-placed transportation committee.
Right. Agreed.
And I
So-
think even what was interesting is I would have thought, what's interesting to me is because the Clean Fuels Program came here
Right.
rather than going there, I actually feel like we might have a good balance struck. But I want to understand the all forms of energy change that, how that would play out.
And I actually just wrote, since reading that aloud, in all its forms and uses. Because there's novel forms of energy being proposed, created, and then we are using it in different ways. But all these things end up having an impact on, they have environmental impact.
So to your point, Senator White, I am looking at that very last paragraph on page 6 that's about transportation, but then it's cut off.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know,
Oh, yeah. I don't know what,
how it interplays with the missions of the, Research Transportation Committee would be helpful, especially if we're gonna add in, the energy in all its forms and uses,
Yeah.
then that inherently also crosses over.
You also send that to me.
okay, I will do that.
There is the strange situation that here where our priority has been and we need affordable heat, that's the number 2 problem. The big problem is transportation, and that we are not dealing with that as it seems strange. Now, I understand part of it is because as we began our work last year, suddenly interstate compact broke down.
Yeah.
And that was it. So, but, now we're down the road a way. Was that a jurisdictional issue, the fact that we've been focusing on heating rather than the transportation? Because it's
Well,
theoretically not our jurisdiction.
but I don't think so. I mean, so let me read the transportation one. A committee on transportation of 5 members, as determined by the committee and committees for each biennium, to whom shall be referred matters relating to transportation facilities, including principally highways and bridges, the regulation of traffic thereon, and the licensing of the users thereof, and matters relating to aviation and railroads. So in terms of the energy consumed by operators in that sector and the environmental impacts of that, I think doesn't seem like it was contemplated.
It sounds like the rule is silent on the question, or
Yeah,
open-ended.
I agree. I mean, it sounds like that is specific to facilities.
Right.
And so infrastructure, and that makes sense versus policy around the energy used on those roads and trains and whatnot.
And I know that they have done work on like charging stations and stuff.
Right. Which would
So-
be infrastructure, which would be part of the facilities. Yeah.
if we wanted to lower the speed limit, certainly transportation would look at that. Any bill doing that would visit, but would we be would we be overstepping our authority by even that?
Although we might be interested in it. because,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it says the regulation of traffic thereon. So,
We've already got communication, we shouldn't be talking about salt, it's on highways, that's their business. Not ours.
I haven't gotten that. You got that communication?
Yeah.
Got a poke in the ribs from Madison, but I haven't seen it as an official legislative position.
And as a greenhouse gas committee, why wouldn't we double the fines for people speeding that are using more greenhouse gas than they need to go to grandma's house for Sunday dinner?
Well, there are a lot of things that are under the jurisdiction of one committee. Corrections floats between, in the House anyway, floats between judiciary and institutions.
and I think some of that falls out. The facility versus the policy that gets you into that facility. So it feels to me a little bit like the same thing's going on, but it's very infrastructure oriented. And I think it reflects a different era in terms of people's thinking around what are the implications of having such a transportation. And I want to be careful and respectful of all the other committees. I'm not complaining, but I think it's confusing. And the fact that bills sometimes are like a toss-up, does it go to finance, does it go here, isn't all that helpful. We've had testimony in finance that's completely duplicative of what happened in here. The RES, this committee spent 26 committee days writing it, 2015, part or all 26 days. We went down the hall and it was reviewed for 4 hours. I think 19 amendments were proposed as a result of that 4 hours of testimony. So I thought that was a dysfunctional display of split jurisdiction because there was a much closer look happened in here and many changes came out of that committee. I'm not sure how it was possible to generate so many amendments in so little time, but the depth of testimony was vastly different. And so that was one bill, one instance, but I saw that as not our best way to move forward as a body. I would hate to see us fall into that all over again. And I think the House is looking at 2 RES bills. We agreed with Senate and House leadership agreed to have the House go first. So I'm anticipating one day there'll be an RES bill coming here. And I would hope that we won't fall into that kind of confusillation all over again. That word is filed right next to monopoly.
So I call it Chuck Berry word.
Okay. All right, so it's a sensitive territory. I'm gonna write some stuff up and come back, and I think in the chair's meeting, I'll bring the subject up. I've already talked to Senator Cummings about it, I've talked to Senator Ruth about it. It's like, okay, so make a proposal. So I'll bring the proposal I've had to the committee, let's tune it up as a group, and then I'll go out. Just send one person so that we don't have the entire committee massacred at once. I'll just carry the message forward.
Have you spoken to Senator Moss?
Not about transportation so much.
Because it seems to me that if we're looking at the Energy Committee actually having jurisdiction over energy, that would mean we would have jurisdiction over certain aspects of energy that are also in the Transportation Committee. We want to make sure that we've got that all squared away.
There are many people who own and operate electric vehicles that are eager and willing to pay their share of road use. And there are all sorts of complicated plans in the future on how to ride with that when we have more EVs. basically $100 a year for road use taxes when you register your EV every year would be would probably be within the bell curve of the right amount, the amount of money that a passenger car spends for road use taxes. And when you speak to that committee on, could you just put in $100 for road use taxes? Their answer is, has nothing to do with transportation issues. I think they go, no, because we plan to do this 5 or 6 years from now. In the meantime, people are getting their vehicles keyed and and people honking their horns or riding their back bumper because they're a bunch of freeloaders.
Well,
That's the exaggerated end.
Yeah.
Other people go like this, hey, good for you, but that's the interplay between the committees, and we should be respectful of all other committees. Someone uttered here recently, and why is the transportation committee dead set against having people that use the roads pay their share when they want to?
well,
What's
I
the
know that
rationale?
we had a bill, maybe 3 years and 4 years ago that said EVs would be exempt from purchase and use tax. And EVs would also be subject to a $100 a year registration fee. That came from working with JFO, transportation specialist. I said, if you bought a new car that year, whatever it was, and it got the average mileage, gas mileage for a car purchased that year, and you drove an average number of miles that Vermonter drives, how much gas tax would you pay by the end of that year? The answer was $106.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, how about $100 fee? And it was sort of a little bit of a quid pro quo, but we're offering a chip in on transportation, avoid the freeloader complaint, which is legitimate, and then meanwhile, ask for a tax exclusion on purchase and use on EVs up to $30,000. And it was capped, and I think
But when you offer,
we did not get very far.
when you offer an amendment on the floor to round it off to $100 or $106 or whatever, they stand up and say, well, this is disrespectful of our committee. We haven't taken this up. Well, we haven't done our due diligence. Would you please do your diligence? No. No.
Well, that
And we do the same thing, in different ways than other committees.
Well, that one in particular, I thought was just a nod in their direction to say, we know the gas tax is declining revenues. So could we chip in as we're going to finance and raise some money for them? But really, the real ask was to finance the way purchase and use at that point, which would have, for many people for whom a tax credit is not particularly valuable. And even if they can use it, it's delayed until tax. Waiving purchase and use at the time of purchase means instant savings. Okay, so are we done walking on thin ice for a while? Okay. So I think with that, we don't have Ms. Chakowski joining us until 11. So everyone's released on their own recognizance until 11.